CenterState CEO is Central New York's leading business leadership and economic development organization committed to creating a region where businesses thrive and all people prosper. Welcome to CenterState CEO's semi-monthly podcast, Talk CNY, presented by NBT Bank. Through this series, CenterState CEO shares the latest news and information on topics ranging from community and workforce development to policy and innovation. Each month, we'll feature leaders from across Central New York to shine a spotlight on the growth and opportunities happening in the region. You'll get an inside look at the people, projects, and planning moving Central New York forward and be connected to the resources you need to support your business's growth. Take a moment right now to subscribe in your listening app for new episode reminders every other Wednesday.
New investments are driving progress across Central New York, but what are the headwinds businesses face, and how can those leaders be prepared for what 2023 has in store? CenterState CEO's Economic Forecast Report is now available and is compiled with the insights and boots-on-the-ground perspectives from businesses across Central New York. CenterState CEO President Rob Simpson joins us today to take a closer look at that report and to share his thoughts on what you need to know about the Central New York economy as we begin the new year, and how the Micron effect creates an imperative to take a long-term outlook.
I'm Andrew Fish, Senior Vice President of Business and Member Experience at CenterState CEO. Welcome to Talk CNY.
And I'm Kate Hammer, Andrew's co-host, business coach, and member at CenterState CEO.
Rob, thank you so much for being here today. We're super excited to chat with you about the forecast for the coming year and what we're seeing.
Absolutely. Really excited about it and super excited to launch this podcast series with both of you and for the community, for our members.
Fantastic. So to start off, just give us a high-level summary. What are we seeing? What are we thinking is going to be coming in 2023 for this region and our forecast?
I think the short answer is right now, what we're hearing from people, I think what we saw evidence in our forecast is a level of unbridled enthusiasm that maybe people in Central New York haven't been used to in a long time. I think that's really exciting as someone who's been doing this work for quite a while to see the psychological shift that's happening. You know, and looking through our forecast, one of the things that really jumped out at me is that 5 years from now, I think 84% of our members expect that the economy in Central New York is going to be a much better place. Wow. That is just, a really nice, wonderful way to start the year with this long lead view and perspective on the fact that, our region's on a growth trajectory again. And I think even more, in a more time-sensitive fashion, 72% of our forecasters are expecting to add jobs in 2023, which is one of the highest levels we've ever seen. Yeah. And I know that contrasts a little bit with some of the national news, people worried about recessions and technology sector layoffs. I'm sure we'll talk about all of that. People locally, business owners, are feeling good about where things are.
That's really interesting because we've been doing this work together for a long time, and typically, right, we don't necessarily see the same things that you see on the national scale, where if we have lots of growth nationally, we maybe have a little bit. If we have big recessions, we maybe kind of drop a little bit, but don't have a lot. Mm-hmm. We're kind of going against the grain here, right?
Yeah, I think that's a great observation. I think we are cutting against the grain. I think that was certainly that's always been the goal, right? Is to figure out how we can put this community back on the map in a meaningful way, change the economic trajectory for the region. I think that what has happened, certainly with the Micron announcement, has just injected a level of energy and enthusiasm and optimism into our community that maybe hasn't been there for quite a while. I think probably right below the surface. But now I think people are maybe a little bit more comfortable saying, you know what, I do think things are going to be better in a couple of years. I do feel it. I do want to build and grow my business here, which ultimately is core to the mission of who we are and what we do.
Yeah, absolutely. You recently talked about Micron as the rising tide that has the potential to lift all of us as the boats around it. So can you speak a little bit more to that and describe what that means?
Yeah, I mean, listen, I think that it means two things to me. First and foremost, our members and the businesses here in Central New York are the lifeblood, not only of this organization, but of the entire Central New York economy. And so it's one of the most validating things about the Micron announcement has been to be able to look into the eyes of small business owners, yourself, and to be able to say with confidence that our community is going to grow again, that a business owner making an investment in Central New York today has a higher degree of confidence on the return on that investment than they did back in October before Micron's commitment. That just feels wonderful after years of those businesses being here, investing here, making sacrifices for their employees, putting money into their facilities and into our community. they are the folks that are going to be benefited and that will be rewarded for their loyalty and for their hard work and their perseverance. I love that. I think the second piece of the equation, though, is as if not more important, and that is that in addition to Micron's investment, they are making the largest community investment of any corporation in the history of the world, as best we can tell. Literally making investments that have the potential to lift our entire community up. People that have been historically disadvantaged and left behind, getting into their workforce pipeline, getting in the system, making investments in things like housing and education, workforce development, our arts and cultural amenities. And as an organization that has as its mission to be a place where business thrives and all people prosper, to be able to partner with a global company like Micron to bring that level of inclusive growth to our region, man, feels amazing, feels super hopeful and optimistic. And I think now the ball's in our court collectively as a community to ensure that we live up to that promise.
Obviously the Micron announcement is having a tremendous impact on what we're seeing, what we're going to be experiencing. But it's not just their investment in their jobs, right? I mean, there's other impacts that this type of an announcement, this type of an investment is going to have. Talk to us a little bit about what we think is going to happen with the downstream impacts, with the opportunities for Central New York beyond just the chip fab plant.
Well, I mean, we know at one point, I think it was back in January of 2022, we were in a meeting with Micron and our partners at the county and the state, Senator Schumer's office out in San Jose, California. And at the end of what was a sort of grueling 4-hour set of meetings, we were trying to get over the hump and convince them this was the right place to be. I remember vividly them looking at each other across on the other side of the table. And it was like they were trying to debate whether or not to share something important with us. And, whatever switch flipped and they all sort of nodded and they shared with us that a project like this has the potential to come with as many as 200 suppliers, right? And I mean, aside from the fact that everyone on the New York side of the table basically fell out of their chair, right. We then had a weekend's worth of work to do to build a supply chain strategy that they asked us to turn around to them in about 72 hours. And, in working with the county and others, just a tremendous amount of work. So think about that, 200 companies, the state's economic impact analysis that they had put together for this estimated that there will be somewhere on the order of 45,000 jobs that are created as a direct result of Micron. The 9,000 jobs direct, several tens of thousands of contractors that'll be on site to support Micron, and then all of the supply chain and the secondary impacts. The small business janitorial services company that needs to add 20 people to be able to service the growth that we're expecting in this region. 45,000 jobs is an astounding number. And yes, that's out over time, projected over 20 years, but it's equivalent to about 12% of our total regional economy of the jobs that we have today. When does an opportunity like that ever come along? It's really remarkable.
It's amazing.
Yeah.
So the supply chain, Micron, it really puts us in a different realm, if you will, as it relates to the semiconductor industry, right? Mm-hmm. You recently went out to California again.
Yep.
I know there were some really fascinating things that happened there, but it felt different, right? When you were out there?
Oh, yeah. I mean, listen, there's no doubt. First of all, the Micron announcement is obviously one of the biggest pieces of news in the semiconductor industry in the world. Mm-hmm. And so on the stage in California, all of these leading industry execs and their suppliers and consultants and engineering firms are all talking about Intel in Columbus, and they're all talking about Micron in Syracuse. And so to hear our community story talked about, not even by Micron, although they did, but by other industry leaders and economists was just a remarkable opportunity. I think my observation, people in the room noticed. All of us, the county exec and his team were out there, Empire State Development and the governor's team were out there. We were out there. We all found ourselves on the receiving end of conversations from people saying, hey, hearing about what's happening in Central New York, want to be a part of it. Companies from all over the country and in fact, all over the world. That's very different to be sought out in a room like that. Usually it's us grinding, working, trying to get meetings. And this time it's just a very different vibe and feel. I'll tell you, though, one of the most rewarding things to hear in that conversation, Scott Gatzmeyer, who is one of the senior execs for Micron, gave a keynote presentation at the event. And Scott was the lead person for Micron on the negotiating team for the New York deal. And he was talking about all the different reasons why they came here, amazing site, the power, the state incentives. And, but he also took a moment and just shared that it's a huge reason why they came was our community and the collaboration that they saw and the potential that they saw. And the fact that, Syracuse might be a work in progress, but it's in progress. It's moving in that direction. And that was evident to them in the site selection process. That just felt really, really good to hear. Especially, I think for us as an organization, having been on the front line of that now for, at least for myself, almost 20 years now, just an awesome level of validation for what we've been doing as a community.
For sure.
Yeah.
As we think about what this means for us, right? No longer following the trend of marginalized growth, marginalized recession, growth community. We've talked a lot about this. Our members who are here, our businesses in this region, are the reason we were in a position to sell this community to Micron, 100%. Right? Their investments, their time, their energy. But now it's time for them to step up, right? What do we need to do as a community? And I don't mean that in a way of like negativity, like they haven't been, but now is a time for them to capture opportunity. What do we need to see from this region in order to really maximize this opportunity?
Well, I think first and foremost, I think we need to ensure that that people here, our business leaders that have been used to a historical economic trend line that was like 1% growth for the last 30 years, people need to throw that assumptive model out the table, and they got to start from scratch. And that's really hard. I mean, we all, you build up this like this rote memory or muscle memory for how we do things. And we've got to be intentional about moving away from that framework. 1% a year is just a fraction of what we're going to experience. In fact, Moody's came out, I think the day after the Micron announcement, and projected 9% year over year tax revenue increase for Onondaga County. Right? That's an incredible level of growth that is unprecedented in our region and is really exciting. But business owners need to plan for that growth or they're going to get left behind, and nobody wants to see that. 2, we've got to get better at telling our story. I think for the last 10 years, we have been experiencing a renaissance in Central New York that was palpable to those that are really paying attention, but that wasn't necessarily worthy of anyone outside of Central New York paying attention to. Maybe a little bit here at the margin, but today Central New York's a national story and probably even an international story. And we're not used to shouting that from the rooftop. We're sort of a blue collar town that has grit and determination and perseverance, and chugs along despite difficulty and demographic and economic trends pulling against us. We got to go faster and harder, and we got to be unabashed about the fact that if a company like Micron, one of the leading technology companies in the world, can do an intensive due diligence process and choose us, that there are reasons why other companies should choose us too. So I think putting any vestige of that old sort of pessimism and negativity behind and broadcasting, whether it's to one of our members, they've got a customer or a vendor that they do business with, tell them that you'd like them to be here and be a little bit closer so they're not flying across the country to service your needs. I think there's a lot of opportunity in that. So let's break that cycle. Let's tell our story a little bit better, and let's not be afraid to make the kinds of investments in our businesses and in our civic infrastructure that are necessary to be successful. And I think that is one piece I do worry about. We are going to have to grow and scale so fast. There's going to be a lot of money for building out the site and attracting supply chain companies. And there's going to be a lot of money for workforce development programming because we got to get people into jobs so that Micron's got people to hire. There's going to be a lot of money for things like housing and transportation because we're going to experience all this growth. What is harder to fund historically for communities in periods of rapid economic growth is your civic capacity and your civic infrastructure. Right? The backbone of what makes a place like Syracuse go is strong organizations, academic institutions, not-for-profit organizations, cultural institutions. And if they're going to scale to meet the opportunity, they have to be resourced properly. So what can our members do? What can businesses do? I think those 3 things help us build capacity, tell the story. Don't be afraid to invest. Seize the moment.
What about the news that we've been hearing about Micron with the 10% layoffs, 4,000 people losing their jobs? Does that have any impact on what's happening with Micron coming to Syracuse?
Yeah, I mean, so it certainly has impact for those 4,000 people, right? And that's unfortunate. I think we're seeing Alphabet, Google's parent company, announce 12,000 layoffs. We're seeing a series of these announcements across the technology industry. I think the short answer is no. This project is going to happen. I am 100% sure this is going to happen. That's not 75%. It's not 99.5%. This project is going to happen. And it's going to happen because consumers like you and me and everyone listening are demanding more and more technology, and they're demanding access to more data and more insights from analytics, whether it's on your smartwatch that tells you how you slept last night, which is a very unfortunate feature from my perspective.
It's bad. Never good news.
There's a great statistic that this company called Excite, they're one of the leading consultants to the semiconductor industry in the world. They gave a presentation out in California last week, 2 weeks ago, that talked about the global data sphere, right? So think about the global data sphere as all of the information collected from your watches, from your phones, from your, Nest thermostat or your car. All of that information gets collected, it gets stored, it gets processed somehow in some way, shape, or form. The entire data sphere in the world today represents 100 zettabytes. Now, for those who are listening at home, who I'm sure know what a zettabyte is, I'll tell you, I did not. A zettabyte is a billion terabytes. It's a mind-boggling amount of information, right?
Yeah.
And that is everything that's collected today. Now, fast forward 8 years, okay? 8 years, 2030, 2031, that global data sphere is going to represent 600 zettabytes. Oh. So a 6x increase in the total amount of data that's collected, which needs to be stored on memory that Micron and companies like it build. And it needs to be analyzed and processed on the processors that companies like Intel are building. So the reason I'm so confident, 100% confident that this investment is going to happen is that the market dynamics are clear and evident. This mega fab that Micron's building is a product of their response to those long-term market trends. It is not a response to short-term 2023 potential recession, layoffs, spending, hiring freezes, some cutbacks in things. Companies are doing that all the time to adjust to existing market conditions. But the future for the market for interconnected things is growing exponentially, and Central New York is going to be at the leading edge of that. This has already been our regional strategy since 2013 to pursue this smart systems market, because we could see even then that interconnected devices, the Internet of Things, was the future for the global economy. And that's why Micron's building this facility. That's why it's going to get built. And that's why people in Central New York should sleep well, knowing that this project is really rooted in a long-term, thoughtful, strategic plan.
Yeah. Great.
So if there's one word that you would use to describe the Central New York economy going into 2023, what would it be?
Rocket ship.
What?
Ooh.
What?
Yeah.
All right. Okay.
I love it.
I mean, you only gave me one word. Is that two?
I think it's one. We'll allow it.
I just think that the way I spell it, it's one. I think that I think this community is about to take off. Obviously, I know that I bring a somewhat rosy and optimistic perspective to every conversation I'm a part of. It is definitely something I'm conscious of, that I have that sort of pre-programmed mentality to approach the world with the glass half full. But what we're seeing from our economic forecast, people are ready to hire. They're expecting the economy to get better. Unequivocally, there are national trends that are buffeting and creating conditions where we could have a short recession. Those things will impact us in some ways.
Sure.
But there's also a lot to be excited about. And it's not just Micron. There's great things that are happening in Central New York. I look right down the block and I see City Center, the old Sibley's department building. Yeah. The old pink concrete facade is gone and a new modern facade is there. And the building is full of commercial tenants, aerospace and defense companies and high-tech companies, and new bank branches are going in, bringing new vitality into our center city. Just recently, one of our earliest tech car and success stories, a company called Impel, used to be called Spincar. They just received $104 million venture investment. Probably puts them close to $1 billion valuation. They're the second $1 billion startup or close to it that we've had here just in the last year. There's so much to be positive about and to be excited about. Challenges for sure, but I do believe this community is about to take off, and I don't think truly, I don't think that there is any force of gravity that can stop us.
Amazing. Rocket ship. You heard it here.
You heard it here.
Rob, thank you so much for joining us on our first podcast. We've got a lot more scheduled throughout the rest of the year. We're excited to have all of you join us, but we really appreciate you joining us today, Rob. Thanks so much.
No, this is awesome. Please, please, please download the Click app, listen to your podcast, enable notifications. We want to bring great stories and great content from our local businesses. We want to celebrate people. We want to put our members front and center in our work. This is the latest in our efforts to do that. We're really excited about trying it out, and we're looking forward to your feedback.
CenterState CEO's podcast, Talk CNY, is presented by NBT Bank and is available on clickcny.com and all major podcast platforms. After each episode, you can join us on Click, where we'll continue to chat about the topic and provide additional resources and links. In Click, you can also listen or watch to every episode in this series of Talk CNY. Click is CenterState CEO's interactive digital chamber platform where our members connect, learn, and receive support from our staff. Thank you again to my co-host, Kate Hammer.
Thank you. Happy to be here. For new episode reminders every other Wednesday, be sure to subscribe in your favorite podcast listening app. If you're enjoying Talk CNY, consider leaving a quick review or a 5-star rating.
Every day at NBT Bank, we focus our business around all the ways we can help yours. We're large enough to offer leading business and digital solutions, but local enough to ensure personalized one-on-one service. So turn to NBT Bank for a full range of business solutions, like capital and treasury management services, even fraud protection, and see how NBT Bank is just the right size to help you do big things. Visit nbtbank.com to learn more and start a conversation. Equal housing lender, member FDIC.